Okay, couldn't tell if this was recording or not. All right, guys. So let's go talk about what you need to know for your test. Okay, so the bulk of your test is going to be over personality. Okay, so remember, personality are the characteristic patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting that a person has. Okay, so it's your behavioral consistency. That's different from traits, which would be like, oh, you're shy, oh, you're talkative. Those are traits. But personality is how you consistently behave. Okay, so the first person we're going to deal with personality is Freud. Remember, Freud is everything psychoanalytic. Okay, that's his school of thought. Things to remember about Freud: you have 3 levels of awareness: your conscious, your pre-consciousness, and your unconscious. Okay, conscious is what you're currently aware of. Pre-conscious is like that little middle area of the iceberg where you can voluntarily think about stuff, but you actually actively have to go think about it. Your unconscious are all of the feelings, thoughts, emotions, memories, everything that's kind of blocked that you're not aware of. The only way to get these is either through dreams, because dreams are the road to your unconscious, or through free association, which is where Freud gives you a word. Is like, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Okay, and so you just do that whole free association, and depending on your response, that's supposed to, magically unlock your subconscious. Okay. Next thing for Freud are the 3 parts of your mind: your id, your ego, and your superego. Okay, so remember, the little id exists from birth. That's the pleasure principle. Your ego is the reality principle, and that's from around ages of 2 to 3. And then your superego is the morality principle, or your conscious, like conscience, conscious. It's your little Gemini cricket. Okay, so those are the 3 parts of your personality. And in order to protect yourself, okay, to protect your conscious mind from threatening thoughts, your little ego here comes up with all these defense mechanisms. Okay, this is like the one thing that Freud has come up with that's actually kind of supported. Okay, all his other stuff exists in that ambiguous gray area that you really can't test it to prove it right, but you can't really prove it wrong. There's nothing to prove its validity. But defense mechanisms are like the one thing that people can really kind of agree on with Freud. So let's kind of go over these. I'm going to go back and use our Biff and Muffy analogy from class. Okay, remember Muffy dumped Biff after 2 years. And so, Biff's devastated, but his ego's got to go through this whole thing to protect him. So different defense mechanisms that you guys need to know is projection. Okay, so what projection is, this is where you believe that the feelings you have towards somebody else are actually held by the other person. Okay, so this is where Biff insists that Muffy still cares for him. Okay, that's projection. You're projecting the feelings that you have onto someone else. Okay. Then there is reaction formation, which is the passive aggressive people. Okay, and that's where you express the opposite of how you feel. Okay, so in this case, Biff would say that he absolutely hates Muffy. Okay, you express the opposite of how you feel. Then, like the best, most healthy one is sublimation, where that's where you go channel your frustration toward a different goal. So with Biff, he starts writing poetry, then publishes a book. Okay, you see this a lot with people who have like anger issues, and then they like go get involved in sports, and so it's a good way to channel your energy. Denial is denial. That's pretty easy. You just don't accept the truth. Biff believes that him and Muffy are still together, so he still calls her or goes and like meets her outside of class, that kind of stuff. Okay, regression is where you slip back. You return to an an earlier, more comforting form of behavior. So Biff starts sleeping with his favorite stuffed animal, Fuzzy Kitten. Okay. You just revert back to another stage where you felt more secure. Displacement. Okay. This is where you redirect your feelings towards another person or object. So when you are displacing negative emotions like anger, you displace them onto people who are less threatening. So, like if you're angry with your teacher or something, then you would, instead of being angry at your teacher, you would displace that anger onto a classmate. So, like Biff, if he's angry, he displaces that anger onto a football by slamming a football or by slamming a door, something like that. Then rationalization, that's where you just rationalize it. You come up with a beneficial result of it, of your occurrence. So Biff, that's where he's like, man, forget Muffy. I can find a better girlfriend. She wasn't even that pretty. So you just have to rationalize why you feel that way. Okay, the other thing to know for Freud are his lovely stages of development. You're not going to have to really know like when they are, just kind of know the order of his psychosexual stages of development. So you go through oral, anal, the Oedipal phase, latency, and then the genital phase. And just also know that with Freud, if there is any kind of unresolved conflict, according to him, if you're overindulged or underindulged in an area, that's when you develop a fixation. All right. So moving on to the Neo-Freudians, who are your psychodynamic school of thought. Okay, remember, they're more focused on how people interact with each other. They do believe in an unconscious, but it's not all the sex and aggression stuff like Freud has. All right. So Carl Jung is everyone has a collective unconscious that's shared among people. And, that's when you get archetypes and stories. So like the hero, that kind of thing. Alfred Adler is the guy who came up with the inferiority complex, that you need to be superior. And it's always about competition. And then Karen Horney looked at children and their need for love and security. So with Adler and Horney, it's all about social interactions, and that's what helps develop your personality. Then humanists, we have Mr. Carl Rogers. Okay, and humanists are all about like self-realization and figuring out how you can be the best that you can be, right? Hashtag be the best you. Okay, so Rogers was all about that people have all good, or all people are good, and that in order to reach your full potential, right, you had to have good interactions with others. You needed to have this high self-concept of yourself. If you didn't have a high self-concept of yourself, this is where you become incongruent, where your ideal self, your self-image, and your true self don't all line up together. But when they do all line up together, okay, and you have this good, positive self-concept, then you're congruent. He also believes in unconditional positive regard. Okay, so that's basically if you're empathetic and you're genuine and you experience this from people, then you have unconditional positive regard. Okay, another humanist was Abraham Maslow. Okay, talked about Maslow a whole lot. Okay, you got to have all of these needs met first. So basic physiological needs, food, water, shelter, all the way up until you can actually become the most that you can be, which is self-actualization. So that's the goal of Maslow. All right, looking at personality tests. Okay, really what you need to know is that you have projective tests like the TAT test, which that's, remember where y'all had to go look at the pictures. That's the thematic appreciation test, and it gave you like this picture and you had to like finish the scenario. And then you also have your eat and plot tests. So these are all projective because they're using some kind of ambiguous stimuli to trigger your thoughts. So it's a projection of your inner dynamics. Okay. Then you also have like the factor analysis, where that just looks at basic traits for you. Then you have like the MMPI, which is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. That's like the 500 true false multiple choice test. Okay, it's a personality inventory. So that goes and like determines your score like on the Costa-McCrae Big Five, right? The ocean thing. And they're objectively scored, but because there is a degree of unreliability, it doesn't guarantee validity, right? Because people can lie on these tests. And so your results aren't always valid on these. And this is there if y'all want to go look back over like the basic concepts of personality theories. You can pause it and come back and look at this. All right, moving on to motivation. Motivation is basically looking at the needs and desires of people and how they channel those into achieving a goal. Okay, so motivation all is like basically about achieving like some kind of end goal. Okay, you have instinct theories of motivation, right? These are things that you're just born with. It's pretty much the same across species. Like bears hibernate, birds are going to migrate, they build nests, salmon swim upriver, all that kind of stuff. In people, our basic innate instinct is the fight or flight response. Okay. And it's all evolutionary. Drive reduction theory. This is the idea that you have some kind of physiological need that creates a state of tension, and you have to go satisfy that need. So the whole goal of drive reduction theory is homeostasis, right? That's your nice balance. So for example, you have a need. You're hungry. You're thirsty. Whatever it is. Okay. This need creates a drive. If I'm hungry, I am going to go eat. If I'm thirsty, I'm going to go drink something. Okay. So then you have your response. And then your goal is your homeostasis, where I'm not hungry anymore and I'm not thirsty. Okay, there's also incentive theory for motivation. I'm getting a gold star. You get good grades and your parents pay you money. Whatever. Okay, so it has to do with an external stimuli. So this is like Thorndike and Skinner, and going back to what we've looked at with learning. Okay, so it's all extrinsic or outside drives. Okay, you do have internal drives, which are intrinsically motivated. Okay, so just know that you have extrinsic and intrinsic drives also. All right, so our arousal theory. This is Yerkes-Dodson. Okay, when we look at arousal theory, what arousal is, it's a state of being awake or excited. Okay. So if we're looking at Yerkes-Dodson theory, okay, this means that like you have to be moderately aroused or awake or engaged in order to perform optimally. Okay, so like if you thrive on the right kind of stress, this is what Yerkes-Dodson is. So if you're under aroused, your performance is going to be poor. If you're overly aroused and super, super stressed out, your performance is going to be poor. There's an optimal level where your performance is good. Okay. So like with arousal theory, this is also why people watch horror movies. Okay, because they like being scared. That's a level of arousal. Okay. Your adrenal glands kick in, pumping out norepinephrine. This is also what's going to activate your sympathetic nervous system, right? It's going to speed everything up. And then know that counter to that, right, is your parasympathetic, which puts everything back. Don't forget all that stuff from the biology unit, because it comes back again. Okay, so here's another slide that just kind of covers all the different theories of motivation. If you want to pause it and go back and look at this. All right, so let's talk about hunger. Don't forget, everything hunger related comes from your hungry hypothalamus. Okay, So you can also be motivated by hunger, right? Drive reduction. So hormones that you need to know for hunger, okay? First off is insulin. So know that insulin, hold on, my kids are being loud and I need to close the door. Insulin is secreted by your pancreas, okay? That's what controls your blood sugar or your glucose. Know that one. Know ghrelin, which this is secreted by your stomach. This is what says I'm hungry. Okay, my stupid way to remember this is your stomach growls when you're hungry. Okay, that's the ghrelin. Orexin, that's what comes out of your hypothalamus, right? Because that controls hunger. You don't really need to know leptin, but you do need to know PYY, and I put it on your review as PPY. I don't know why, just whatever. I call it PPY. But PYY is coming actually from your digestive tract that says, I'm not hungry. So this is the one that tells your body that you're full. So ghrelin and PPY are opposite of each other, okay? Ghrelin is I'm hungry, PPY is I'm full, and then insulin is blood sugar, okay? And so that's motivation. So real quick, let me go over emotion, okay? I didn't talk about this, but this is just basically that people overall have the same emotions, and that when you look at other people, which is really kind of hard this year, you can like pick out people's emotions. So that's kind of like along the same lines with facial feedback is, you know, smile and you'll feel better. Like when you frown, you're sad. If you kind of have like an angry face, that like your facial features can determine your emotions. All right, but let's look at the different theories of emotions. And so here's kind of how they work. So common sense emotion, you see something you're afraid of, you feel afraid, so then you're like, ah! Okay, then you get your autonomic arousal, so your actual emotion. Okay, but we have different theories. So with James Lange theory, this is your emotion comes from the fact that you're aware of your physiological response to the emotion arousing event. So your stimulus creates the response, and then your feelings arise from that response. Okay, so feelings follow your body's response. Okay, so you have your stimulus, you have your arousal, and then you have the emotion. Okay, so that's like, oh, you know you're in love when your heart beats and then your body trembles and you have the butterflies. Okay, right? Like you see the person, you get all that stuff, you get the little butterflies, and then you know you're in love because of that kind of deal. All right, so like I said, that's James Lange. Cannon-Bard. The way I remember this is it's like a cannon. Everything happens all at once. So you see the stimulus, and everything gets processed in your brain, and at the exact same time, you feel the emotion and you experience the response. Okay, so the rat charged at me in my garage. So simultaneously, I get the response of jumping because I'm afraid. It's a very evil rat, very traumatizing. Okay, so Cannon-Bard is simultaneous. The two-factor theory is Shaxter-Singer. Okay, and that has a more cognitive approach to your emotions. Okay, so your stimuli can cause the arousal, but the arousal doesn't necessarily lead to the emotion itself. You have to recognize your state, and then you look for a stimulus to explain it. Okay, so if you're in a situation, it's how you think about it that causes you to have that conscious feeling. Okay, so my example to help remember this is when a baby falls, right? they might feel scared, or they might be startled, but when they look around, they pick up on adults' emotions, and then that's when they'll go feel the emotion that somebody else has. Okay, so that's the 2-factor theory. Don't forget neurobiology. Okay, that your brain is the pathways for emotions. Okay, and so when you're experiencing emotions, your brain's either going to take it on a high road where it's going to go to the thalamus and then to the amygdala, or it takes the low road where when your brain gets the input, it goes straight to your amygdala. Okay, so brain causes emotions. That's the whole neurobiology theory. All right, then stress. Okay, know that there's good stress and there's bad stress. Okay, and stress is totally different from frustration, which that's just, kind of low intensity stress that you feel every single day. All right. So know you have your little stress hormone, which is cortisol. And then your body, depending on how long you're in a stressful situation, okay, it's how your body reacts to it. So if you're exposed to stress for a really long time, your body's response is going to be GAS, which is general adaptation syndrome. Okay, no, there are 3 stages of GAS. Okay, there are ARE 3 levels, and this is the best way that's going to help you remember, because you are going to have to know which order they go in and like what they stand for. Okay, so there are 3 levels. I know it's really corny and really stupid, but you know what? If it helps you remember it, we're good. Okay, so A is the alarm phase, right? This is when you like really freak out because you remember something that's due the next night, or you have like 2 hours to do something. Your heart rate increases. Your blood pressure goes, like everything. Like you just totally freak out. Okay. Phase 2 is the resistance phase. This is where your body learns to cope with this prolonged stress. The body remains physiologically ready, so your heart rate's still high, your hormones are released to maintain readiness. So this is the resistance phase. This is, like I said, you got to cope with it. And then finally, you get the exhaustion phase or the burnout phase. This is where your parasympathetic nervous system returns everything to normal. But because your body has been in this state of stress for so long, this is where you become more vulnerable. You get sick. Okay, I can't say that word. Okay, this is where you can get a disease more easily. You can get sick more easily because your resources to protect your body were all depleted during that whole resistance phase. Okay, so that is literally everything that you guys need to know for your test. It's going to be 60 random multiple choice questions from like a lovely 80 question bank. So make sure you study. Stop.